How can we keep from raising entitled kids? How do we help our own kids think beyond themselves? You know, I hear a lot of people complain and whine about, selfish generation and entitled kids and millennials or Xers or whatever. And first of all, I'll tell you something. I have recently hired some fantastic, young, right out of college staff and employees. So I know there are hardworking, fantastic ones. In fact, our newest research, the Trust Outlook, our global study, last year, when we did a question globally, we asked about what makes people put more into their organization, what helps them be loyal, what would make them take a pay cut, what would help them really be engaged. And really what it came down to, no matter the generation, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, was trusted leadership. So one thing we can do is create trust in leadership, and that engages everyone to be sacrificial. But as parents, or if you're a teacher, how do we create kids that aren't entitled? Number one, listen to or show them the news. Read about places and what's going on around the world. Help your kids to see that what's happening with all these sometimes tragic situations around the world. You know, it's interesting. If we get exposed, we start to put ourselves in their feet, and we start to think of ways maybe even we could help solve the world's problems. We want to create world-changing kids. We want to create kids that think beyond themselves. And by the way, when kids start to think beyond themselves, they're actually happier. But the problem is, number two, we need to talk about it. Ask questions about, or spur conversation about things that are happening beyond themselves. You know, a lot of parents, I think, and I've fallen in this trap for sure, a lot of parents, they're on the way to the recital or on the way to sporting practice. Okay, what are you gonna do today? How are you doing? Have you had enough to eat? Have you this? Have you that? And it's all about the kid. And of course the kid learns to just think about themselves and their needs. But even going to practice, you can say, hey, what are you gonna do for your team? Or even have conversations about what's happening in the world, what's happening beyond themselves. Because if you start talking about things beyond them, they start to think about things that go beyond themselves. And that takes away the entitlement, helps them start to be grateful, and helps them start to see that they're a part of something bigger than just themselves. And number three, travel. If you can, travel the globe. If not, travel across your city to people different from you. You know, when people start to see, when your kids start to see not just their little world, but they start to see how other people do things. They start to see how other people treat people. They start to see other value systems. They start to think beyond themselves and see that their way isn't the only way, and they become less entitled. Number four, it might seem crazy, plant a garden, a vegetable garden. When kids start to see that their food doesn't just come from a fast food restaurant, and they start to see that, oh, you have to grow it, you have to cultivate it, you fertilize it, and then wash it, and then you get to eat it. Or in our case, we love our little hobby farm, but we have our own chickens, and you gotta feed the chickens, you gotta take care of the chickens, and then you get to wash the eggs. And every day we see miracles, because every day our kids go collect the eggs, bring them in, and we have fresh eggs every single day. And when we get to see that everything isn't so fast, that it has to be worked for, that there's a process, they start to get less entitled and think beyond themselves. Number five, I asked some very close family friends of ours, how did you raise such good kids? And one of their answers was they do a lot of minimalistic camping. This isn't easy for every family, but we actually went on a trip with them finally to the Boundary Waters canoe area, and they take their kids, now they're in college and they've graduated from Ivy League schools, and it's amazing what their kids have become. But we started to see that at the Boundary Waters canoe area, that's on the border of Canada and Minnesota, and it's totally protected, and it's millions of acres, and it's all these lakes, and you have to get a permit, so you basically aren't going to see anybody else when you go in. You canoe in with your everything you bring in, you bring out. So your food, your tent and everything, you canoe in, and then you might find a portage spot where you hike with your canoe through a quarter mile or so, and you put the canoe back on the next lake and you canoe across that lake, and somebody hikes the canoe, somebody brings the packs, and finally you go in, you set up a tent and at a spot, and you just have a fire pit where you make a fire, you have to make your own food, and what happens is the kids start to have to work together. They start to need to rely on each other. Of course, there's no access for any technology up there, so they don't have to worry about mobile devices. And it's amazing in just a couple days what starts to happen when you take your family on a minimalistic camping adventure. And at least for the family I interviewed on this, and then we went to the Boundary Waters with, they said that was, if they were going to attribute their great kids to anything, that might be one of the key takeaways. So let's do our best. I'm not perfect in any of this, but let's do our best to raise kids that think beyond themselves, that can help be the solution for changing the world, because they're not entitled, they're thinking about others, they're valuing others, and when they do that, they're not only more grateful, they are actually more joyful. If you like that, subscribe to our YouTube channel or go to trustedge.com for more free resources and tools.